Today is Thursday, March 14th, 2024. My name's Jeanette, Pincus, and I have the honor of getting the opportunity to interview Reesa Portnoy. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. To begin with, I'd like to have you share with us some information about your family, your parents, grandparents.
Okay, I was an only child. I did not know my grandparents because I was the youngest of both sides of my family. I was the baby, and so my grandparents had all passed away before I was born. I had lots of aunts and uncles, lots of cousins, lots of extended cousins, because particularly on my mother's side, there were lots of families that came to this country at the same time. I think my mother's family came in 1886, so there were lots of cousins. And
What was their family name?
my mother's was Cass, and but I actually have a family tree on Jenny.com that traces that family all the way back to I don't know how many grades. Grandfather, who was born in 1729, I think. So anyway, so there were lots of a big family,
Yeah.
and we lived in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn in the late 40s and 50s was, at least where I lived, was a wonderful place to grow up, and completely Jewish. My elementary school did not have a single person who wasn't Jewish, and I went for a couple of years to junior high, and I think there were 5 children in the whole junior high who weren't Jewish. So it was a very safe childhood.
What was your neighborhood like?
What was my neighborhood like? Well, we lived close to the school, and
Were you in
my
a house and
yes,
apartment?
yeah, houses, 2-family houses, and my neighborhood was really my street because there were so many children my age who lived on that same street, and I'm still in contact with them. So most of them stayed in the New York area, not all of them. So yeah, it was a very nice.
Do you remember the names of the schools you went to?
Yes, I went to. My elementary school was the Emma Lazarus School, PS 268, and we had to learn the poem, and maybe not right now, but I usually can remember it because it was really drilled into our heads. And then I went to junior high, Winthrop Junior High, PS 232, and Winthrop has a Facebook group, so I sort of know some of the people. I don't really recognize any of the names because, I moved away young enough that I didn't go all through high school with those people. But it was a great childhood.
What do you remember doing? What did y'all do for amusement?
We played in the street. We played, punch ball, we called it, where you throw the Spalding ball up and hit it. And we played in the street with our friends and tag, and I had some friends who lived a little further who I might visit after school, but mainly it was the kids on my block.
You mentioned that a teenager you had moved to another neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. I moved to California.
Wow.
My mother had a sister who lived there, and my parents had always thought about going there. So in 1959, the year after the Dodgers left, we picked up and moved to California. And my mom and I had been there for a visit. My dad had never been there. And we moved to a part of California called the San Gabriel Valley, just south of Pasadena. And it was almost a very small Jewish population, let's put it that way. And it was definitely culture shock. I mean, I don't think I actually understood until I moved there that Christmas was not just a holiday that you saw in movies and on television. That it was actually a holiday that people celebrated in their home. So it was really culture shock.
Do you remember how old you were, what grade you were going into when you did make that move?
Yes, I was going into the 9th grade. And my mother went to the temple and happened to meet a lady there who had a child my age. So during the summer, I got to know her, and then we got to school. She had lived there all her life, so she introduced me to her friends, and I had my group. And I joined USY, and I joined BBG, and I met my husband. He was in AZ.
From that long?
Yeah, I was 15, he was 17, my first husband. So anyway, it was a very different experience, but, I just had my Jewish friends, and I guess that was my comfort level.
Going back, I guess in the Brooklyn area, well, that's where a lot of your family was,
Right,
and you left them.
absolutely.
So, were you members of a temple or synagogue there?
No, we were not. My parents were the rebellion generation. Their parents had come as children, and they were still very old world. And, my mother said that the only good thing about losing her mother before she got married is that she didn't have to keep a kosher home. And they were really the rebellion. Where we lived, there was the only synagogues that I remember were Orthodox. So you either belonged to an Orthodox synagogue or you didn't belong to anything. And it was a generation that thought girls didn't need a Jewish education. So everything I learned as an adult, not as a child.
But you did observe holidays, like, I guess being in Brooklyn, Rosh Hashanah was,
The schools were closed.
yeah.
I mean, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, every holiday, the first 2 days of Passover, the last 2 days of Passover. So it was, you know what, when I was in Israel, it reminded me of being in Brooklyn, where you didn't have to do anything to be Jewish. And in California, you had to work at it. And in Dallas, you have to work at it.
When you were in California, you mentioned it was a temple, but it was USY, so that's a conservative.
Right, but my parents didn't have to be members. They just, they rebelled. They did not want to do that, and I can't tell you why, because I really don't know that I totally understood it, because my grandparents weren't alive to see that interaction. So, but they were definitely the rebellion generation. When we lived in California, I moved to Texas. I was only married, I think, less than 2 years. And we moved to Houston, and we were there for about 4.5 years. And the last 2 years, we joined a congregation, but it was a really big congregation, so I wasn't really very much a part of anything. And then we moved to Dallas, and my neighbor across the street said she was Jewish, and she belonged to a relatively new congregation not too far, Temple Shalom, and would I like to go with her and see what it's like? And I did, and 51 years later, I'm still at Temple Shalom.
So is that almost when they opened, they started?
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
started, they had just been in the building 1 year.
Yes, so you were one of the
Yeah,
first
I wasn't one of
members.
the founding members,
Yeah.
but I was pretty early on. Yeah, I was pretty early on. So, and I've been a temple member ever since, and I think it's important.
And you've been in the Jewish community here for over 50 years.
51 years.
I just went back with education. You did say you had gone to high school there. Did you go on
I
to
did.
college?
I went to Cal State Los Angeles, which was close by, and I majored in political science, and I thought I wanted to go to the diplomatic corps. And then I got married right after my junior year, and it was, okay, do I change? Well, it didn't make sense to change majors at that point. So I got my degree in political science, and just for a very short time I worked in an office, and then we moved, my husband got an opportunity to go to Houston, and so we moved to Houston.
And you mentioned you met your husband in USY when you were 15. What was his name?
Steve.
Steve. And what kind of work did he do?
He was in sales.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you ended up getting transferred. What'd you think about moving to Texas when he told you that?
You know, yeah, I trying to remember, I thought about that, and I don't think I objected. I thought it was fine. I do remember the first Thanksgiving there, crying my eyes out because it was so lonely and there wasn't any family around. But you know, after that, I joined the JCC. I took a class in bridge. I learned to play bridge, met some girlfriends, and then I had my kids, and it was fine. I mean, I learned. The thing is, there, it took me a while to really become any part of the community. So I knew what I needed to do when I moved to Dallas, and so I knew joining a congregation, and I can't remember. I think I joined NCJW right away, and I knew that I had to be the one to, you know, become a part of the community if I wanted to be in the community.
So you mentioned, how many children do you
I
have?
have 2 children,
And you had them both in Houston?
and they were both born in Houston.
And what are their names?
Julie and Jeff, and they both live here. One lives in Plano, one lives in the M Streets area.
Okay. So you mentioned you did get very active when you moved to Dallas on many things, and you mentioned being active in Temple Shalom, the JCC, NCJW.
I wasn't active in the J here.
Were you members here with their
I don't think
kids?
so.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. I know we were in Houston because it was really convenient to where we lived.
Yeah, okay. Were there any other civic organizations that you got involved or any other volunteer work that you
Yeah,
did?
NCJW, I was in B'nai B'rith Women. I did all of those kinds of things, and Temple Shalom Sisterhood, which I'm active again in, until my son, he was a year when we moved here. Back then, kindergarten was only half a day. So when he went to first grade and full day, I said, okay, I need to have a degree in something that I could actually get a job in and do something I wanted to do. And so I decided I would get some kind of a business degree. When I started, I didn't know what I wanted to do until I took my first accounting class. And the teacher drew counts on the board and tipped and tied those numbers, and I came home and I told my husband, I want to be an accountant. And that's what I did.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and then I was not, at the years that I was in school and then working, I was not as involved in the community. But I was treasurer of Temple Shalom at one point. And then I've gotten, more involved.
So when you're working, you're a working mom?
Yes, but my kids, by the time I finished school and did all that, they were teenagers. So when they were, and we used to do our homework together. We'd sit at the kitchen table after dinner, and all 3 of us would do our homework.
That's great. Since you've been here for 50 years, how do you feel the community? Has it changed
Oh, yeah.
for you? Yeah.
There's so many people who weren't born here, like me. And I think like anything else, when you bring lots of people into anything with different backgrounds, grew up in different places, it enriches the community. So I think, I think that's been a good thing, but of course that's my perspective because I wasn't from here. Maybe some people from here don't like all us, people who've come in and possibly changed the community a bit. But I think we've enriched it. And I think it's a really good, really committed community. My friends in California do not have the same feeling of community that I have here. Because we've talked about it, we stayed in touch all these years, and it's just different.
You had mentioned your first husband, so when did he pass away?
Okay, we were married for 30 years, and then we got divorced.
You got divorced, okay.
And then he did pass away about 10 years after we got divorced. And I was single for approximately 3 years, but met my second husband about a year and a half later. And we had the same backgrounds. My first husband came from a Holocaust survivor family, and they were German Jews. And my second husband came from the same kind of background that I came from, and grew up in Forest Hills, Queens. And he moved here when he was 27. So, and he has 2 boys, so I have 2 wonderful stepsons, and our families blended really well. We're just very lucky about that. So our kids are all friends, our grandchildren, really, the little ones don't even know who's a real cousin, who's not. So it worked out well.
That's
and he passed away, July will be 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. And what was his first name?
Ken Portnoy.
Okay. And the 2 stepsons you have, what are their names?
Kevin and Scott.
So tell me about your grandchildren.
Well, I consider them all my grandchildren. There are 11, because there's 6 from my side of the family and 5 from Ken's side of the family, but they were all born during the time that we were married. And I have a really nice relationship with Ken's first wife, Susie, and so I've been accepted as a grandma. And because my first husband died so young, the grandchildren on my side, he's the only grandpa they really know. So they're great. The oldest one is 22 and goes all the way down to 8. So
That's terrific.
Yeah, so
And then you
that-
mentioned they all live here.
I know Ken's oldest son, Kevin,
Oh, okay.
his wife, and 3 kids live in New York.
Okay.
And the younger one lives here with his 2.
Okay,
And my kids live here.
There too. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So will you tell me anything about your kids, what they do,
Okay.
and their spouses?
Okay. Well, my daughter's Julie Gothard, and I'm really proud to say she is chair-elect for Jewish Family Service, and she amazes me. I mean, she has wonderful public speaking ability that I don't have at all. I mean, just can't get over that. And she has a business of her own, and lots of volunteer work. And my son-in-law, Sander Gothard, is a physician, and he comes from a very, very active family in the Jewish community. Just stop. There we go. And so they're involved in lots of stuff, and so I try to be involved in the same things that they are. So so that has gotten me back involved in lots of things in the Jewish community. And their 3 kids are, one's in graduate school at Indiana, one is a sophomore at Northeastern in Boston, and the youngest one, Jeremy, just got accepted to UT.
That's wonderful.
So very
Tell me
exciting.
the first 2 names of the.
Michaela
Okay.
and Lindsay.
Okay.
And then the youngest one is Jeremy.
Okay.
And Julie and Sander both went to UT, so of course, very exciting. And then my son Jeff, his wife is Mindy, and he has 3 girls, 2 twin girls that are 14 and a half and an 8-year-old. And I'm not even sure to tell you exactly what he does. He does I don't know how to explain it. He has various businesses, and he makes a living, let's put it that way. He's tried to explain it to me. I don't understand it very well. And he has a lake house out in East Texas, and so it's really nice because, some Thanksgivings we've all been out there, which has been really, really nice. And they're great, I think I get along really well with everybody. And then my youngest stepson,
what are their names?
Then there are Ethan and Megan, and every Tuesday I pick Megan up from Parish, and we go to Starbucks for a snack, and then I take her to ballet, and get to spend some time together. And then 2 weeks after Ethan's bar mitzvah, the second boy in New York, there's Aaron's the oldest, and then Ryan, and then their little girl is Rachel. And 2 weeks later is Ryan's bar mitzvah, so we're all going up to New York for that bar mitzvah. As a matter of fact, I'm going to leave here and go into the shop here and see, they're looking for a talit with green on it, so I'm going to see if I can find that. So I think I have a pretty good relationship with all of them.
That's wonderful. Got all these simchas happening
Yes,
together.
yeah,
That's
it's very
wonderful.
exciting.
Yeah,
It's
that's
very
great.
exciting. So.
I guess more on a reflection note is there like anything that you want to share with your family, or things like values that you feel are very important to you, role models that you had, anything that's like coming to mind that you think about a lot, especially now with these bar mitzvahs, it's you're seeing the tradition going and things being passed down.
Right. My parents were not a role model as far as Jewish belonging was concerned, but in terms of ethics, in terms of doing the right thing, in terms of the ability to cope. I saw my mother lose 2 brothers within 3 months, and neither one of them had turned 60 years old yet. It was a very tough time, and obviously it was very sad, but she never fell apart. I never saw anybody in my family. We just, no matter what happened, everybody put one foot in front of the other and went on. And that was the model that I saw, and I think that's what I've tried to do in my life, and that's what I want to leave to my kids, that, bad things happen in life, they do, and of course you're supposed to mourn, and of course you're supposed to be sad, but life is for the living. I can hear my mother say that, and you just go on because you don't have a choice. And I think that's just really important. So, and now I'm living at the Legacy up at Willow Bend, and it's a whole new phase of life, and it's wonderful. It's just Monday night we had a concert, we had a violinist play gorgeous music for an hour. Yesterday, Mark Creditor did a program on, George Gershwin, and it was absolutely terrific. So it's a lovely lifestyle. This is the next phase of life.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you
It's
for letting me
wonderful.
do this. I'm
Thank
really
you.
pleased.